Okay, let's see what happens with this one. Welcome to the new world. Let's hope we get a good spawn. Yep. Up. Oh, this is nice. Alright. Okay, well, for those of you who are interested in what just happened, I had a little incident on the previous game. Suffered a setback, death, and I respawned. But I kind of learned a lesson on why I should have the biomes set to normal instead of large biomes. My hardcore spawn location was set to a place where it was basically a gigantic island that was nothing but desert. There were no trees or anything. I circumnavigated the entire island after dying about 6 or 7 times, and I realized there was nowhere to go. Now, I could have just kept dying over and over and over again until I finally spawned somewhere else, but I began to suspect that more than one of my hardcore spawns was within that island. So, gonna try it again, gonna try playing again. I do not like the fact that I had to restart, and I especially do not like the fact that I had to restart after basically promising myself that this game was going to be the one to play through. But, whatever. The old files are going to be deleted soon. And, anyway, so I guess I should introduce myself again. My name is Karnak Sam. I'm playing Better Than Wolves, and if you don't know Better Than Wolves, you should really get an instance of Minecraft with Better Than Wolves installed, because it's really fun. And if anybody has any questions on why or what I'm supposed to be doing, I kind of narrated the last one as if it was like a how to play video, but I don't have the energy to do that again, so it's just going to be a let's play video from here on out. I'm going to assume everybody knows how Better Than Wolves is played, and if anybody sees anything that I should be doing differently, or if anybody learns anything, please drop me a line. Just let me know what you think of my playstyle. As I said before, the texture pack that I'm using is a Summerfield's modified texture pack for Better Than Wolves. To the best of my knowledge, it is the most complete version of Summerfield's for Better Than Wolves, and it is it has connective textures, custom item textures, and really like this texture pack. So anyway, without any further ado, let's kick some ass on Better Than Wolves. I'm gonna listen to a podcast.
And let's move to a week after death. A week after death, the skin has blistered, and touching it can cause it to fall off. A month after death, hair, nails, teeth generally fall out.
The hair and nails, by the way, Josh Clark just did an episode, I think, of
Don't Be Dumb?
Don't Be Dumb, where he mentions this. And no, I think the whole episode is based on it. The hair and nails are rumored to grow after death.
Right.
And you've seen that in movies all over the place, in writing. That is actually not true. There's no magical growth properties to these cells. It merely looks like this because your skin is drying out after death. And, I mean, you know, as your skin starts to dry and pulls away from your hair and from those cells, it looks as though it's growing, or has grown, at least.
The internal organs and tissue liquefy, and that in turn swells the body until it bursts out, and then eventually eventually, depending upon the conditions of the environment in which this body is found, all that remains is a skeleton. And then if we move from months to years to centuries, only the bones. And then if we move past that, unless you win the lottery of fossilization, right?
It's just nothing.
And depends again on the conditions, because there have been many ancient, I guess, vestiges or remnants of humans found. But more often when we say that, we're talking about, the very ancient Homo sapiens. We're talking about discoveries of pieces of skeletons.
Yeah, and it also depends on the temperature of what zone or where you are.
The humidity, the aridness. But that's what happens to the body. And this brings us to the more enigmatic, I would say the more crucial question. That's the body. What happens to the mind? What happens to the consciousness? What happens to you?
And we're going to talk about that in just a moment, right after a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, you've heard us talk about the great courses before, and you know that Ben and I like learning as much as we possibly can, and we like learning at our own pace.
Right, and we're excited about something new from the Great Courses. You may have heard us talk about this before. They had a fantastic thing on the history of espionage,
yes,
right? Which I read cover to cover and listened to the audio on. This new thing is called the Great Courses Plus Video Learning Service. It's unlimited access to thousands of fascinating subjects.
Yeah, that's right. There are over 4,600 video lectures that you can get access to in subjects like history, science, photography. That's one of my favorite ones.
Even cooking.
That's right.
These are taught by award-winning professors, experts from National Geographic, Smithsonian, in the case of cooking, the Culinary Institute of America.
And with the Great Courses Plus, you can watch as many different lectures as you want, anywhere, anytime.
Right. Here's another thing. So the Great Courses Plus is officially launching this fall. It's not out yet. But because you listen to Stuff They'll Want You to Know, you have an opportunity to be one of the few people to try it now for my favorite price.
Free.
It's true. And that's only if you use the invitation code CONSPIRACY.
Now, this code's only going to work for the first 100 people, so we urge you to use it as fast as possible.
Right, yeah. I think we count in that 100 too, so go ahead and think of it as 98. We know you're going to love the Great Courses Plus, so you can sign up now for your free beta access.
So go to thegreatcoursesplus.com and enter the invitation code CONSPIRACY.
That's thegreatcoursesplus.com, invitation code CONSPIRACY. And we are back. We have talked about the body. We have talked about the nature of death and how tricky it is to define it. And now let's make it even more complicated. Let's talk about the mind.
Ah, yes. The mind, Ben. The mind. What is this thing? The mind?
Right. Is it consciousness? We can barely define consciousness, much less quantify it. There have been all these reports of people dying, Matt, at least being clinically dead, only to return minutes or hours later. And these are the things that we call near-death experiences, or NDEs. Kind of like, do you remember that movie Flatliners?
Oh, yes, I do.
That used to scare the heck out of me, man.
They're in medical school and they're trying to, are they in medical school? I know they're just a bunch of doctors trying to figure out what the afterlife is. So they bring people to the brink, let them die, and then try and bring them back, right?
Yeah, they like freeze them, induce some kind of clinical death, and then they shock them back, right, with the paddles. Terrifying. But it turns out near-death experiences, whatever they are, spoiler alert, no one's quite sure yet, but they're real. Yeah,
and they're a part of our lives now. That's something that I think hopefully most of you have heard of an ND. I think you probably have. That means there are phrases like, my whole life flashed before my eyes, or go into the light, or I went towards the light, but I came back.
Carol Ann.
Yes, I think it's a little different situation, but you know,
Right. So yeah, that's a great thing, and that's a great thing to point out because they are part of our culture. Mm-hmm. And there have been decades of research in this. But Matt, what are these things?
are they hallucinations?
Spiritual experiences?
Are they proof of life after death?
Or are they just chemical changes in the brain and sensory organs right before you die?
Wow, way to be a buzzkill, Ben.
I know, I'm sorry.
So this guy, Dr. Raymond Moody, coined the term near-death experience in his 1975 book, Life After Life, and many credit Moody's work with bringing this whole concept, this idea of a near-death experience to the public's attention.
Right, but that's not the first time this has happened. It's just he is most likely the one who coined the phrase.
Yes. But the phrase is important because it creates the thing, right? It's no longer a concept, it's a thing.
Right. It's no longer a bunch of isolated experiences. But reports to this, this is something Josh points out in his article, reports of this date as far back as Plato's Republic.
Whoa, that's pretty old.
Yeah, 360 BCE. There's the story of a soldier who was killed in battle, had a near-death experience, describes his soul leaving his body and being judged along with others in heaven.
Whoa. And then he just came back, I guess? Like,
presumably.
ooh, did he get kicked out?
I don't know.
I'm going to have to go back and read Plato's Republic.
Well, it's interesting you say that because sometimes people say that they have this conversation where they are told that they need to come back to do something.
It's not your time.
It's not your time. In fact, most near-death experiences share a surprising number of common traits, but not all of them are created equal, and some don't follow a pattern at all. There have been people who died and say, it was just dark, I felt a jump, and I woke up here.
Yep.
In Grady Memorial or whatever.
But I would say, a lot of them do share some common things, right?
Sure, let's talk about a few.
Well, one of them is the light that we mentioned, going towards the light. Sometimes it's this very intense, not painful, sometimes painful, but not always painful, that will fill up the room. And in some cases, subjects see a light that they feel represents either their idea of heaven or what they believe to be heaven.
Yeah.
Or maybe even God.
And that's interesting because you kind of have to wonder if there's a Rorschach aspect to this. Like a Rorschach ink blot wherein people are seeing a little bit more about themselves than they are seeing what's on the page.
Oh, yeah. And if you're seeing that light, I'm just assuming that what I would associate it with would be probably the sun or warmth, and something that is calming and inviting almost.
I would probably. I've never, to my knowledge, had a near-death experience, but I would imagine if it happened to me, and I had already had a day that crazy,
yeah,
it would be anything goes. I wouldn't. I would be completely fine with the idea of being some otherworldly encounter. Another thing that people report, and this is fascinating, is the out-of-body experience, or OBE. This is when someone dies, they feel that they have left their body. You'll hear stories about looking down and seeing the surgeons completing the operation. You'll hear anecdotes of people watching their own bodies get shocked and then feeling pulled back in. And sometimes they feel that their spirit, their incorporeal consciousness, is lifted out of the room into the sky, maybe even into space, toward that intense light.
Now, I just want to point out that an OBE may sound exciting. It is good to know that you don't have to have a near-death experience to experience an out-of-body experience. However, we don't recommend most of them, at least on air.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going. And then let's also give a note to the government-sponsored experiments with outer body stuff. Tremendously controversial. Check out Project Stargate and Ingo Swann, SWANN.
I just want to say you almost said government-sponsored experience, and that phrase Oh man, so many things are being conjured with that
Oh
phrase.
my gosh, yeah. Not all of them pleasant.
No.
So you could also, if you have an indie, enter into another realm. And this is strange because I was reading about this even as a kid. People would say most people who say they go to some other place, go to a place where they feel like a safe, warm, glowing light bathing them. Essentially heaven. Some version of an afterlife paradise, but a minority of people have described their passage. They say they do go somewhere, but they go somewhere terrible, horrible, beyond human comprehension. They go to whatever is on the other side of that drop in Event Horizon. They go to hell. Or something very much like it. That's their report.
It makes me think about whether or not what type of pain receptors are involved with that. If you're still able to feel whatever has caused you to enter this state, if you can feel it intensely, then I can imagine that you probably end up in hell.
That's interesting, yeah. And then again, it's how much of this is based on someone's perception, because we will say that there is at this point no universally scientifically accepted proof that these people are actually going somewhere. So what we're telling you are the reports of people who have survived. And they also sometimes don't go there alone.
No, sometimes when you have an out-of-body experience, there are other things, other beings with you. These sometimes have been called beings of light. Sometimes there are representations of spiritual entities like an angel or, again, in rare cases, a demon. But a lot of people will think that they're seeing dead loved ones, people who have already made it to wherever it is that they believe they are.
And there are also reports of course, we've mentioned the tunnel, that people feel they're in a tunnel with that intense light at the end. They also have reported communication. This is something that happens often where the subjects or the people who have returned from this near-death experience say that they heard a voice telling them it's not their time to go back. Some also say that they were given a choice to go into the light, wherever it may lead, or return to their earthly body.
And then the last one that we're going to talk about here is the idea that you see your entire life, right? You get a replay, or at least major points in your life where maybe it's just your brain firing off all these different memories really rapidly. Some people call this the panoramic view of life. Others will see a fast-forward film of the entire thing. This can be, there are a lot of different ways that this is manifested. Some people say that it happened extremely fast. Some people say it happened really slowly and they were there for almost another lifetime.
And they might feel that they're being judged during this time.
Yes.
So I think it's interesting that you point out the difference here, Matt, between an out-of-body experience and a near-death experience. Because some people claim to experience these out-of-body circumstances when there's no death or dying or even physical threat. Do you have time for like a quick anecdote?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm not gonna go too much into personal history, but you know this because you and I have talked about it off air. Members of my family, on one side of my family, where I'm from, historically have, and this is not Nashville, ladies and gentlemen, it's a much more rural area, but members of my family have claimed for decades in the past to have things where they'll have dreams that later come to pass, or they'll say that they have had out-of-body experiences or can induce them. And, these are members of my family, so I'm not trying to violate their privacy or anything. But listeners, I believe it is quite possible that you know someone who feels that they have experienced this, or that you yourself may have experienced something like this inexplicable thing, right? And that gets us to some interesting statistics. How many people have had something like a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience?
Well, according to a 1982 poll by Gallup and William Proctor, they found that 15% of all Americans who had been in a near-death situation where they almost died or died and then came back had experienced an NDE.
So not that many people. As a matter of fact, a minority.
Definitely a minority, but 15%, I don't know.
Yeah, well, of that 15%, 9% said their experience had this out-of-body thing going on. And 11%, again, of that 15%, said they entered another realm or dimension. And 8% said they met spiritual beings. Now, in comparison to all of the people who have been in these near-death situations, it's a very small number, and it's getting smaller. But good news on this, of the people polled, of that 15%, only 1% reported a negative experience.
But we got to remember, these reports are, 1982, that's upwards of 20 years ago, and there are other researchers who, when they are studying this kind of thing, they're usually looking at a much smaller scale. And also, the statistics on NDEs are going to vary pretty widely.
Right. So much of polling, and polling isn't art, so much of polling depends on how the question is framed.
And where you're sampling.
Where you're sampling,
right?
Who you're asking, even the time of day.
Yeah.
Or the environment they're in. For instance, those people who are being polled in a busy day at the mall are a lot less likely to think in depth about their answer. But the point being that these statistics still are not conclusive. One thing that is very interesting that the Gallup poll found there was that religious beliefs or lack of religious beliefs don't appear to affect the likelihood of having a near-death experience. So somebody who is very much considers themselves very religious to whatever particular religion it might be, and someone who considers themselves completely an atheist may all have a similar experience. It doesn't necessarily impact their thing. It's not just one particular denomination of Christians or one particular Eastern religion having these experiences. It's across the board, and people aren't sure exactly what the common denominator is.
Yeah.
Other than dying.
Yeah. Other than dying. Wow. It's one of those things, man, this whole topic. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but my existential dread of death brought on to me by my grandfather. It's not his fault. He just was a great thinker, and he thought about it way too much, and I don't know, somehow or another, he's got me to think about it way too much. And this kind of stuff, thinking that all humans, all life maybe, experiences this kind of thing when it dies. I don't know. That's a good
point. I wonder, do you think that higher order animals, do you think that mammals experience something? I mean, we know so little about animal intelligence other than the fact that we've woefully underestimated it for most of human history.
I guess it just depends on what is scientifically happening to trigger whatever's occurring and what exactly is experiencing this.
Now, I'm excited about this idea, Matt, because what is the near-death experience of an African elephant or a chimpanzee or a cetacean like a dolphin? What do they swim toward a light, for instance? Do they hear the calls of loved ones?
What about even cattle? That's a messed up thing to think about.
Yeah, that is true, because cattle do have intelligence. Well, either way, whatever we find should be applied to any animal with the I guess the brain structure, a similar brain structure.
Yes.
Because at this point, scientists cannot ultimately explain why some people have near-death experiences and why some people don't. And that's partially because these things are complex, they're emotionally charged, and there's a lot of it we can't really test. Like there's not an effective, double-blind, peer-reviewed methodology for whether someone actually met God.
Yeah, these are all subjective reports of people who experienced something on their own.
Yet we can attempt a little bit of a, let's call it, scientific speculation. How about that?
Okay.
All right, so our brains process sensory information. We know that much. We know that what you and Noel and I and everybody else listening to this encounters as reality is just the sum of sensory information we receive filtered by our brains, and really it's only the stuff our brains say, hey,
That's what that is.
look at that.
Yeah. Hey, what's that smell?
What's that smell? Is that a horse?
Is that what our brains sound like?
Yeah. Our brain, and then sometimes our brains will get something and not send it to our conscious mind, like, forget about it.
Yeah, forget about. Yeah, I'm just gonna pretend that's not there.
Nah. Hey, you should get a sandwich. Me and Stomach were talking.
Oh Lord. So sequel to Inside Out going on in here.
Yes, it is. But okay, so we have these huge nets cast, right, through all of our different sensory organs, and then we also have a very complex system of nerves and muscles that do something most of us take for granted. If you're not driving, listeners, if you're in a place where it's safe for you to do this, I'd like you to close your eyes. Close your eyes. Are they closed? And listen to this. So take your right or left hand, your choice, and hold it out in front of you. Now move it to wherever you want to move it. Now slowly take your index finger and touch it to your nose. Not that hard, huh? Isn't that weird? We know where our body is in space without observing it through other things. Our brain knows what our hand is doing when it's not looking at it. It's a superpower we take for granted. That's how we know where we are in space.
That really is something I take for granted.
That's something everybody takes for granted because we're used to it.
Can I tell you something that I do?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things is to get on my drum kit when all of the lights are out and there's not a single source anywhere and it's in the pitch black, and test to see if I can play a song all the way through in the complete darkness just by understanding where the things are in muscle memory. That is one of my hands down favorite things to do. So I just want to say thank you, human bodies, for being able to do that.
Can you do that? Can you play the songs in the dark?
Oh yeah.
Dude, that is so interesting. That's amazing. I would love to see/hear that. I guess hear it.
Yeah, you wouldn't see it unless you had night vision.
We'll work on it. So, but that's another sense, right? So imagine that as you're dying, all of your senses are malfunctioning, right? People will say that hallucinogens can induce some similar experiences to a near-death experience. So instead of the real stuff that's happening, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're seeing is faulty information, maybe because of drugs, maybe because there's some sort of traumatic experience causing your brain to shut down. So what you're actually getting from that great filter is your brain trying to interpret and curate all this information. So some scientists have said that this neural noise, for lack of a better term, an overload of information, creates that image of a bright light that grows larger, and that because your spatial sense, right, is malfunctioning, that your brain might interpret this as you moving.
Yeah, because it's losing control. It's wow, that's fascinating to think about.
It's it's not a conclusive proof, but it's a pretty good argument.
Yeah, it's a good argument, and I can visualize it really well.
We also know that there's this peaceful, calm sensation people report during a near-death experience.
And that could be a coping mechanism with what's going on. It could be endorphins that are produced during the brain when there's some kind of trauma. A lot of people will experience this sense of strange detachment and almost this emotionless response when you're going through some kind of traumatic event like this, whether or not it's related to a near-death experience. And this is the same effect that's going on in your body. Your brain is trying to cope really hard with what's going on, and it's almost like it doesn't. So you can't say that your brain doesn't understand, but it is getting signal noise, or their wires are being crossed.
Sure. So okay, well then, how would we explain in this perspective? How would we explain those visits to heaven or meeting with God?
Well, that could be a lot of things that are kind of working together. We're talking about that faulty sensory input, your oxygen deprivation. Your brain and your body aren't getting that life, the blood and the chemical that makes us function.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the endorphins and the chemical concoction that's being released. And it might create this surreal euphoria that's happening. It feels realistic to you maybe, but it's just happening in your mind.
And then later, we know how tricky memory is. When the subject or the survivor recalls this encounter, it goes through the filter of that person's conscious mind. So these bizarre things that didn't make sense are retroactively, or kind of retconned.
Yeah.
In this argument again.
Yeah.
Into something understandable.
You put your filter on that has all of your past experiences, your beliefs, all the structures that make up who you are. Throw that filter on that thing that you went through. And there you go.
And while we're talking about filters, this is something that interests me too. It's strange how if you look at the common stories of alien abductions in the modern age and the common stories of fairy abductions kind of things, it's strange how the tropes match one-on-one and so closely. Anyhow, episode for another day. We've mentioned like 4 episodes for another day, but the next question is, how do we explain those out-of-body experiences that occur using things like memory? Somebody is dead. There's no brain activity. There's no blood flow. How do they come back and remember something? Again, anecdotal, spoiler alert, Project Stargate was closed because they figured that it was all a bunch of malarkey. But if it is true, if somehow people do have this ability to perceive these things while they're not in their body, while their body is dead, while the part of the brain that makes memory is closed for business.
And then they come back and say, I remember this person saying this in the room with me.
That's like driving a car down a road that doesn't exist and still getting to your destination. This thing could happen just with retroactively explaining stuff. There's also a pretty compelling argument, not conclusive, but compelling argument that maybe people are still receiving sensory information in a way that scientists have yet to pin down or to track.
I can imagine some quantum stuff going on there that we just have yet to study.
Yes, and that is where we get to the big end of this episode. What is consciousness? It's the question we still haven't answered, right?
Yeah, well, we haven't on this show answered what is consciousness yet. I don't think anybody out there has yet.
Well, people have answered it to their satisfaction.
Sure.
Which maybe that's where it belongs. I mean, is consciousness a thing hardwired into the surface of the matter making up your brain, like a tattoo along your neural net, your synapses? Or is the substance of the brain just like a radio receiver? Is it the end point for something like a radio wave? Is that what you are? Is that what the consciousness is? And if that is the case, where is the transmission coming from?
I'm pretty sure it's Georgia State Radio. 88.5? No?
I mean, yeah, I got on a little bit of a soapbox. I'm sorry. But
no, I loved it. I was just sitting here listening. I love it.
We don't have the answer, though. And if 88.5 is the point, which is a pretty good radio station, and I really enjoy it, then I'm happy with that. But listeners, we would like to hear from you, whether you have had a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience, whether you think the current scientific theories of this hold any water. Do they have sand? If so, why? If not, why not? And we're about... Oh!
Is that... No?
I'm not going to say anything this time. I'm just going to let you hear the sound of the mic clicking on and sit here in silence.
Okay, well... Hi, Noel.
Hi.
Oh, you are here.
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was just kidding.
Oh, good. All right. So, no, what do you think? Have you ever had, and I know this is a very personal question, have you ever had a out-of-body experience or anything like that?
No, I mean, the closest thing I've had are like brushes with things that one could interpret as being a sign of the afterlife, or, you know, what happens next. But I've usually been able to justify them in some way or another, but I can't help but like remember the feeling of feeling like that was a thing, even though I was able to later kind of say, oh no, this is actually what happened. So I'm sort of on the fence about a lot of that stuff. I wouldn't say I don't believe that stuff is possible, but I definitely don't know enough to know.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing a little bit?
Oh yeah, there's a couple. There's one in particular where the girl I used to date in college, a good friend of ours, passed away in a car accident, and she would just kind of come and meet me in between classes, and we would hang out in her car for a while, or just kind of in the area. But there was one time where it was cold, so we were definitely sitting in her car, and she was sitting in there waiting for me, and I got there, and she looked really upset and freaked out. And I was like, what's wrong? And she kind of looked at the windshield, on the inside of the windshield, and she sort of blew on it. And the girl who had died, her signature was there on the inside of the windshield. And it was like this intense moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm experiencing this thing. This is real. Like all of this stuff is really happening. And then, you give it a little more thought, and you realize, she hadn't died that long ago, and they rode together a lot, and they were like in their late teens, early 20s. It's just the kind of thing a girl would do, is like write her name on condensation on the inside of on the inside of a window, and there's residue on your fingers that can kind of stick around, and so that's how I explain that. But it doesn't really change the fact that at the time I felt this like intense connection to something, which is it's weird. It's kind of sad to explain it away in a way, but I don't know. That's what that was.
Well, in a way, explaining it in that manner is a coping mechanism, right?
Sure.
Not only, even though it's kind of a hard thing to do sometimes, it also, I don't know, it's one of those things where when you can bring that light out in the darkness and say, well, maybe this is what it is. I don't know. It actually makes me feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, it was an interesting experience. I've had other moments like that, but nothing that's pushed me over the edge. But again, I don't discount anything. I like to think that there's certainly things beyond my understanding that I will probably never understand. So I choose not to be a jerk and say it's all bogus.
Oh yeah, I think absolutism is probably a foolish move, especially when we consider how much of human history has been it's like, you remember that old story, we may have mentioned it on the air, about the elephant and the mice, and there's...
Yes.
Yeah, there are larger things, and human understanding is so cartoonishly limited at this point that it seems almost arrogant to completely discount anything. I don't feel like it's necessarily sad if there is a scientific explanation, because that shows that there is some sort of progress. But there's so much stuff that we as a species are still grossly incapable of measuring, let alone understanding, right? Like we get to the brain, and it's true that there's a lot of pseudoscience, and it's true that there are a lot of charlatans and swindlers and things like that. But it's also true that there are brilliant people working every day to add just a little more light to this cavernous universe. And I want to be along for the ride, man. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, it's interesting times for sure. Seems like every day there's something new that either completely contradicts or starts a whole new idea of thinking about things.
Here's a question, Noel and Matt. What do you guys think? Do you think maybe this is a question that presupposes a lot of stuff, listeners, so I understand if it's a loaded question. Are we maybe not supposed to know what happens after we die, or is there really just no answer? Is it really just, that's it? Is it like, remember that video game Captain Planet where you had to play the whole thing through and you only got one life?
No.
What?
Yeah, it was a really difficult video game.
Never heard of this.
It
I don't know
turned
how
me
I
off the video games.
Yeah, how have I not played that?
Well, let me save you some time, Matt.
Oh no, because I'm gonna sit down and then not get up until I beat it.
But if there is something, then why is there no proof? Why do people have no clue? Me included.
It's because the experience of what being alive is outside of being alive as a human. So, like, you have to separate the two. So, being alive as a human is a thing that happens, right? You become alive all of a sudden, out of nowhere. Then you become not alive at some point further down the line, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm proposing, gentlemen, is that whole experience, that is all an arcade game set in the Rick and Morty universe. That's what it is. You just start doing it, and then you end up, you're back, and it's like, wubba lubba dub dub, and you're like, oh man, that's what that whole thing was.
So if you were ever in a traumatic accident and you hear in the distance, wabba labba dub dub dub.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, I'm all right. It's just Rick.
Yeah, no, I mean, backing it up to something slightly serious, I guess.
I'm sorry.
No.
That's great.
This is great. It's like you said, though, we're sort of blinked into existence, you know, based on whatever circumstances, but then somewhere along the line, we develop this entitlement where we're like, we deserve to know.
Ooh,
I mean,
ooh, you got me. That's good.
I mean-
That's true. Shots fired, but well done.
That is all.
Well, what do you think, listeners? Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this. Again, death is a serious and universal thing, so while we might be joking around a little bit, it is, I think, as we said earlier, a little bit of whistling through the graveyard, maybe. But we hope you found this interesting. We hope you found it worthwhile, and more importantly, we'd like to hear from you.
yeah, we want to do a bit of a poll of our own. Have you experienced any kind of near-death experience? And if not that, maybe an out-of-body experience? Do you have a relative that has a great story? We just want to know. We want to know if you even believe in this stuff or what you believe happens when we die. We want to know all of that stuff because Ben and I are curious. And again, you guys always send us the best ideas. So the next time we update this, we'll be like, oh, look at all these people said. They knew way more than us, Ben.
Right. Yes, it's true. And if it is a personal story that you do not want to have on the air,
Yes.
then please let us know that as well. We'll write to everybody who writes in and just check and make sure that's cool before we bring anything to the public. But we are going to head out. Oh, and Matt, people probably want to know the best way to contact us, right?
Yes, that is important information, and here it is. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter. We are Conspiracy Stuff or at Conspiracy Stuff on both of those. You can find us on Google Plus if you use that. Conspiracy Stuff again. It exists, Ben.
That's right.
We are there.
Yeah.
And, find us on YouTube. We are Conspiracy Stuff there as well. Even though the show is stuff they don't want you to know, Conspiracy Stuff, you just have to, in your mind right now, just smash those two together. They are one and the same, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and the last thing, if you don't want to do any of that stuff, all the social rigmarole, get off my lawn, just send us an email from your Dell machine.
UFOs to ghosts and government cover-ups, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
I'm Ben, and we are here as always with our super producer, Noel, the Iceman Brown.
Hey, Noel. So, everybody, just off on the top here, just wanted to let you know, I got a vaccine, a Tdap.
What's a Tdap specifically?
It is supposed to help you out with tetanus, diphtheria, and whooping cough. And there's a specific reason that you need to get this vaccine that is happening in my life. It's pretty awesome. And anyway, I seem to be having some kind of reaction that is not usually what's supposed to happen when you get this vaccine. I had a fever of 101.7, and just been sweating my butt off.
Kind of out of it, feel like your brain is sort of wrapped in cotton.
A bit, yeah.
So, yeah, I remember you were telling me that about 1 in 100 people have a reaction that you're having.
Well, okay, I can't say with authority that is true. I was told by a gentleman on the elevator of this building yesterday because he happened to get on the elevator while I was moving my arm around, because the injection site is on your upper arm, and it's very, very sore. And there's about a 24-hour period where your arm is supposed to hurt. And, I was awkwardly moving my arm around when he got on the elevator, and he was like, ooh, would you get a vaccine? And I said, yes. It really hurts. He's like, what kind? Told him it was a Tdap, and he's like, ooh, man, there's about a 1 in 100 chance that you're going to get a fever like I did. And I was like, what? Got home. Guess what? It manifested. I don't know if that dude cursed me. Maybe he did.
Maybe, maybe he incepted you somehow.
I don't know.
Well, this guy, Matt, if you were to describe him to someone, would you describe him as a doctor?
I couldn't say.
Okay.
I believe he lives in this building, but who knows? There are all kinds of different and amazing people that live here, and some that aren't so amazing.
This building is huge.
Yes.
There are people that no one else knows lives here, right?
Yep.
In the nooks, the crannies, the unexplored areas of this gargantuan thing. And today we are talking about unexplored gargantuan things. Now, guys, we hope that you appreciate this show because Matt has pushed himself a little bit closer and closer to that death's door to podcast
this is
today.
This is so dangerous for me to do this right now. Oh.
Well, at first I thought that was a single tear coming out of your eye, but it appears to be blood.
It's blood and sweat, and maybe a tear.
So, oh man, that's kind of cool. I can respect that.
Cool.
So we're gonna get through this episode to tell you some exciting stuff. Before, hopefully, my co-host and producer, Matt the Madman Frederick, it's your nickname for today, passes away into the great beyond.
Oh, man. All right. Cool. Let's get through this then.
No pressure. Let's just make this the best one.
All right.
So, by way of an introduction, and Matt, I'm joking, right? You'll be fine? I don't know.
Sure. I thought I would be over it much faster than this. So maybe I'm just on a downward spiral. We'll find out.
Well, it's cool, man. A little delirium always helps a show.
Yes.
That time I didn't sleep.
That was great. That was my favorite episode we've made so far.
Really? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, this is going to be the new favorite.
Okay.
So there's this book that I really enjoy called The Atlas of Remote Islands. And for everyone who is a book lover in the audience, and there's nothing wrong with not being a book lover because a lot of books are terrible. Let's face it.
There are so many out there now.
I mean, we're not paid to be someone's English teacher. We don't have to pretend that every book is amazing. The world is just lousy with books that, are not going to be your favorites. That doesn't mean that they themselves are objectively bad. It just means they're not for you.
That's right.
And every so often you run into something on the other side of the spectrum, a book that is so amazing that you can't even hold on to it because you continually give it to other people saying, oh, I want you, please check this out. This reminds me of you, or whatever you say.
It kind of becomes a part of your worldview almost.
Almost, yeah. And the Atlas of Remote Islands, which is more of a travel log than an actual atlas, it's just this book of 50 different very small islands and a small 1 to 2 paragraph story about their history. And while I was reading this book, at least the first time, what I became really captivated by were the islands in the southern hemisphere. Not just, the scattering, sparsely populated tiny islands in the oceanic area, but also, and even more so, the inhospitable, barren places. The closer you get to Antarctica, the more it seems as though the natural world is telling you, turn back.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about today. We are talking about Antarctica, the most mysterious continent.
That's right. Let's get to some of the facts. So Antarctica is the 5th largest continent in the world. It's roughly twice the size of Australia, which, Australia's pretty big, everybody. So that's a lot of ice-covered lands. Mm-hmm. It's home to 70% of the world's freshwater supply and 90% of the world's freshwater ice. And this place is really cool. It's currently the coldest and the windiest continent. It also possesses the highest average elevation of any continent, which is crazy. That just means it's full of those mountains.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing. Yeah, because 98% of the landmass of Antarctica is covered with ice, and if it didn't have the highest average elevation, if it did not have those mountains, then it would probably be 100% covered with ice. Well, maybe 99 or something, but just because there'd still be some land on the coast. In some places, Matt, this ice is 3 miles thick.
Jeez.
So, to paraphrase so many horror movies, what lay beneath?
Ooh.
We know relatively little about this. And this week, we looked at what people might find beneath the ice if it all melted away. The ice in Antarctica comes in 2 large categories. There's the western sheet, there's the eastern sheet. It extends all across the land like some curse in a medieval fairy tale, and also into the surrounding ocean. So what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about some of the fringe theories and some of the concepts that you will hear related to Antarctica, and it touches on so many other things, some of which we've covered before, and a couple of which I would consider our greatest hits or some of my favorite stories.
Yes, and one of those is climate change. This is one that really gets our audience riled up one way or the other. And you know what? I'm in a state at this point, Ben, I'm just going to say it. Climate change is real. This stuff's getting out of hand, and we're all going to die.
Well, of course, climate change is real because climates change over time. I think what...
Man-made climate change is
okay.
real. It's
go.
our fault, and we're screwed.
Yeah, the Anthropocene, right? It's an interesting thing. You can always... I don't know. I think it's so clever what people do in the sorts of televised debates where it's they do the thought-terminating cliche thing. Let's call it climate change. Like now, as we're recording this week, one of the big things are the big things in international affairs would be the Iranian nuclear deal, and everyone's like nuclear deal, nuclear deal, nuclear deal. But you have to dig yourself to find the exact details. You have to go onto the internet and search. The mainstream news is not really telling the details of stuff. And you know what else? Just while I'm on a rant here, and this is just going to be so brief. Look, I understand when people get very, very emotional and angry about their opinion or what they see as the facts, right? When someone, because we get letters all the time when someone says, well, climate change, again, another buzzword, right? Because what we're talking about is much more intricate, much more widespread.
Yeah, very specific things that are occurring.
Right, exactly. Ocean acidification, stuff like that. Things that have been proven.
Yes, rising sea levels.
Right. And people were really arguing over the degree of it and the cause of it, but just throwing buzzwords at people kind of hacks the brain to get past the cognitive ability and straight into the primitive reptile brain stuff, where all of a sudden the person who believes climate change is not man-made or believes, that some great lizard messiah is going to emerge from a volcano beneath the ocean, whatever. I'm saying it doesn't matter what people believe. It matters how you believe and how you support that belief. And it makes me just somewhere between derisively amused and incredibly sad when I see people get super, super emotional about a thing and think that, if I yell at this person enough, if I am just angry enough, then it'll matter. And then at that point, you have to ask yourself, are you trying to persuade that person, or are you just trying to, get caught up in a pitchfork party?
Yeah, or are you trying to express your belief hard enough, or reinforce your belief by yelling?
Oh, yeah. We should look at those psychological phenomenon, too. That's one, a little bit of inside baseball here. That's one show that I pitched for Brain Stuff. It's another show I do, and they after we discussed it with the production team and stuff, they didn't want me to do this episode, but it was why you can't win an argument on the internet. And
that's a great episode.
Well, thanks. Why don't we do it?
Yeah. Let's do it.
But okay, so aside from that rant there, the forces of climate change clearly have impacted the planet and are continuing apace. And we'll talk a little bit now about the thing you were about to bring up, because you can't talk about Antarctica without talking about ice, and you can't talk about large amounts of ice without talking about climate change, right?
Yeah, so with climate change, we're talking about several things that really are happening. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, sea levels really are rising, and they're going to rise more in the future, or at least they are projected to do so. Now, you might also hear people claiming that Antarctica loses ice at some times, and then it gains it back at other times, but there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing, this whole idea, hinges on a bit of a misunderstanding. Think of ice in Antarctica as coming in two different types. So you've got your land ice, and you've got your sea ice. Now, the sea ice itself is seasonal. It grows in the winter as it gets colder, then it recedes just a little bit as it gets warmer.
Or, it can disappear almost completely over summer, but it's still always there. It just, it's kind of like if I could make a bad comparison, it's kind of like a person who maybe gains and loses weight very easily. They have variations of weight.
Yeah, there's a range. There's essentially a range of weight.
Yeah.
In ice that Antarctica takes on during the winter.
Antarctica gets some water weight, okay?
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but like you were saying, there's a different kind of ice, right?
Yeah, the land ice is very different. This stuff it accretes slowly over time, and here's the problem, is disappearing. Now you have to imagine that the ice that's on land, as it is melting, it's increasing the amount of liquid water that's in the seas.
Right, because the amount of frozen water already in the sea is part of the volume of the oceans.
Absolutely, that stuff, the sea ice that we were talking about.
So let's advance this further, because there are probably some people who are already saying, no, you totally don't get it. Well, we have a plot twist here that a lot of people might not be aware of. This change in land ice cannot be attributed solely to a changing climate. For instance, look at Thwaites Glacier. It's this large, rapidly changing outlet of the West Antarctic ice sheet, and it's being eroded by the ocean, sure, of course, but it's also being melted by a different thing.
Yeah, from below, from the geothermal heat that's being forced up through it. And that to me, Ben, presents a whole nother issue.
Yeah, a whole nother boxcar of badgers.
Yes, the boxcar badgers that are heating up the earth from the inside. What's going on, Ben?
A whole nother boot of birds. Bag of cats.
The bird boots?
Yeah. Can of chinchillas. I could do this all day. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, that you can check out the study by researchers at the Institute for Geophysics at the University of Texas at Austin, or UTIG for those of you who love an acronym, and that is in a journal called The Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So they found that despite the popular debate, as usually happens, there are other factors at play, and it's not just a yes or no thing. It turns out that geothermal energy geothermal heat rather, is changing the nature of the continent. And one thing we should say about Antarctica, the history of Antarctica, that's just amazing, is it's only been an ice-covered continent for about 35 million years. Which sounds a bit long in the tooth for us, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a bad weekend, right? Yeah. And it could totally come back. It used to be a subtropical thing that looked a lot like the modern day Pacific Northwest for anyone who's been there. Cool, beautiful place.
Yeah.
People still aren't sure what happened 35 million years ago, because apparently, just in the scheme of things, the way this ice crossed the land and covered the place happened very quickly. So we don't know what happened, and we don't know exactly how Antarctica works, for lack of a better phrase.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're not for a lack of trying, though. The human species has set up research facilities across the land in a couple places. You know, one of the things that I found really interesting was who owns Antarctica.
Yes.
And when you look online, you can find the maps of the segments that Antarctica, the way it's split up, because it goes from the South Pole or the, I think it's the actual, I can't remember if it's the actual South Pole.
Or the magnetic South Pole.
Yeah, I think it's the ceremonial South Pole.
You're talking about the Antarctic Treaty, right?
Yes.
By 12 countries who called the International Geophysical Year of 58.
But it's really cool. It looks like a pie chart. Almost.
Yeah, with all the flags arranged around it. Yeah, the treaty itself is something that we can talk about in detail. Do you want to do it now or do you want to do it later? We can do either.
We could do it later. Let's do it later.
Either way.
I'm sorry. I just kept imagining who actually gets to study which parts and if you're going to get different research on the northeastern side that's very different from the research you get on the southwestern side.
Oh, you mean if there's like a good neighborhood of Antarctica?
I mean, maybe.
Wise?
I don't know.
I imagine if you're a biologist, that answer is absolutely true. I guess it depends on your field of study, right?
Sure.
You know, a while ago, there was an expedition that you and I had talked about a few years back. Actually, we should get into that later.
Okay.
Sorry, spoiler alert. Anyway, just to sew it up, geothermal energy. If human beings build permanent settlements on the continent of Antarctica and get rid of the ice. And yes, before the emails come in, by permanent settlement, I mean like a nation state or colony. I don't mean a research center, which is a beautiful thing, but does not a country make. And but if people ended up actually living in Antarctica, if we're going to be nationalistic, the USAA.
Yes.
Wait, I think that's already an insurance company.
Insurance.
Yeah, USAA just buys Antarctica, or some other large corporation. Google owns Antarctica. So anyway, these people could easily end up powering their society by geothermal energy, which sounds like science fiction, but is totally possible.
I'm now imagining a country that goes through and just burrows through the 3 miles of ice, makes giant walls to keep the ice away, and then has a civilization that's kind of surrounded by these ice walls.
Oh, right, living inside the walls of the
ice.
canyon. Similar to the Native American groups.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's not science fiction. It's happening now, just in a different country.
Oh.
Iceland, not the big ice walls, but Iceland.
Yes, yeah.
Iceland derives the majority of its power from geothermal energy. So it's completely possible, but it's also true that the nuances of the Antarctic climate or the long-term effects are still largely there's still some questions to answer, just because this geothermal stuff is relatively recent, at least our understanding of it, and the effects of this, the long-term effects, kind of anybody's guess. We still don't exactly know, what happened 35 million years ago. We're catching up. We're like people who started watching Seinfeld today.
Oh no!
I'm kidding.
Oh, but there's so much to learn though, at least, and there's so much to enjoy.
Yeah. Okay. That in that case, the comparison holds. I'm just a little bit sour about it because I had never really watched a lot of that stuff, and then I just started watching it. I'm still in that moment where I realized that all 4 of the main characters' problems could be solved by having a cell phone.
Oh, wow.
It's true.
If they were able to just communicate immediately.
It seems like a lot of the things are based on
timing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, herald structure in improv or something.
Oh, that's why. Oh my gosh, Ben. I never thought about that before. That's huge.
Is it? I'm sure that somebody else has thought about that.
I'm sure, but oh wow, thank you.
I went to New York and saw the not for this thing, but I was traveling, and as you know, Matt, we saw the Seinfeld apartment, and it was just something that a TV company made to as a recreation, but I was startled that so many people liked the show. There were people around the block, down the street, to a different street. It was very crazy. I don't know if it was just the neighborhood or if it's that popular.
It was a big deal. My parents liked it a lot.
I'm going to feel strange if I ever have to meet Seinfeld.
Jerry
Seinfeld, Larry David, if I ever have to meet them, because I don't know. I guess I'll just be like, hey, guys, I understand your show is quite popular, and
I don't think we're ever going to meet those
congratulations. Who knows? They might be listening now.
guys.
Anyhow, tangents abound in this episode. Let's move to one of the... Let's cut straight to the chase. One of the episodes we did early on in our career together, Nazis in the Hollow Earth.
Yes, the idea that perhaps, there is a civilization that exists below the crust of the Earth, and as crazy as it sounds, that there is some type of inner star that powers the civilization beneath us, and there's a powerful civilization that the Nazis at least thought, perhaps a small group of the Nazis thought could come out from the bowels of the earth and help them win their battles.
Because as the National Socialists, or these factions of the National Socialists, aka Nazis today, as they knew with a strange and mystic religious certitude, these denizens of the inner world were also totally Aryan.
Yeah, totally, and down for the cause. I mean,
Right, and cared about what was happening.
Oh yeah,
In these political maneuvers. So, what we did find with that, and you can check out our video on the topic, is that it is true. You know, that stuff you see on the History Channel can be often disingenuous, but it is true that factions of the Nazi Party had an intense belief in the occult, which we've talked about with the Annenberg.
The Annenberg, the Thule Society.
Right, yeah. And the belief in Vril and trying to reconstruct this new mythology. And there really were government-financed quests to find things like these hidden mystical lands like Shambhala, Shangri-La, and...
or in the case of Antarctica, an entrance to the underworld.
Yes, yeah. And there was actually a plan to colonize part of Antarctica as a means of expanding the German whaling industry at the time. And that leads...
At least supposedly,
yeah, right, in New Swabia. But as we learn, and as you can see, if you look into some of the historical documents available, no one found any entrance. And that's not to say there's not an extensive possible cave system in Antarctica.
I would say there most definitely is, just because of the ice melting over time and then refreezing and the melting and refreezing.
And the way caves form.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there might be something there, but we have, at this point, we have little evidence of... We know a little bit about what kind of life might be there, but we know very little about it. We do also have another thing that we should bring up, and I think we did an episode on this too, Matt. This belief in the National Socialist Nazi Party exploring and attempting to take over Antarctica ties in with a little-known story in U.S. history as well, right?
Operation High Jump, you say?
Yes.
Where we chased them, or we at least followed the Nazis down towards Antarctica.
Let's do the movie version of it. How would you say them if you were pitching the movie version of Operation High Jump,
wow.
Matt? How would you pitch it to me?
Okay.
Like we're in the elevator.
I've got 5 seconds before we get to the next.
Yeah, I'll help you pitch too. Let's say Noel is who's a good director? Who's a director that you really like? Well, other than Noel, he has to be someone else.
He has to be someone else. Let's go with
Michael Bay.
No.
Oh,
I mean, I could see him being able to sell this movie though.
right.
Oh God, yeah, let's do Bay. He can sell this.
Okay, so if we were pitching Operation High Jump to Michael Bay, what would we say?
All right, this is how it would go.
All right.
Sup, Bay. So check this out. I got this idea for a movie. Think United States military, Navy, giant ships, right? Then you got Nazi ships too, right? So there's one section, Nazi ships, United States Navy, other ships heading towards Antarctica, right? Then they get into these battles. We're going to make them get into battles because we need explosions, right?
Boom.
Right, Bay? Okay, so what else, Ben?
Oh, this is good. I think he would go, all right, stop. You had me at explosions.
And naval ships.
Now, can these ships transform? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Something
Didn't he
like
do
that.
Battleship? I can't remember.
I don't remember who did Battleship. Was it Oliver Stone?
Oh, God. I don't think so.
No. All right. Yeah. It's if we were doing that in a world kind of intro, we could tell some great stories about Operation High Jump. The thing is, they would not be the truth. WikiLeaks has been involved in bringing up some documents related to the activities at the time. So first, let's talk about what Operation High Jump actually was supposed to be. It was led by a guy named Richard E. Byrd. He was a rear admiral of the U.S. Navy, and their mission was to establish a research base, their official mission, with the charming name of Little America 4.
Nice.
Little America 4. That's got to look interesting on a postcard, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so according to the official naval report, at least, they had objectives. They had 6 objectives. The second of those was this idea of consolidating and extending sovereignty over as much of Antarctica as they could.
Makes sense. That's what we do.
That's what people in general seem to be quite fond of. But the WikiLeaks reports seem to prove that the underlying motivation for this was not so much the National Socialist Party, but the Soviet Party, the USSR, because Operation High Jump occurred in 46 and 47. So that would be after World War II.
Yeah, right at the tail end.
Mm-hmm, right after World War II has concluded. And the reason, the theory that we've often heard is that, Nazis regrouped to a secret place in Yugoslavia, and Operation High Jump was part of a secret war, a secret atomic war or something. But what it seems to be more of is more evidence that immediately after World War II, the Cold War began.
Yeah, even before it ended.
Right,
really.
Right, even before it ended. And there are different interpretations of that. I'll probably go on to Facebook and Twitter, where you can follow us at Conspiracy Stuff. And drop the links for anybody who wants to check out more, at least of what WikiLeaks has to say regarding Operation High Jump. Now we get to one of the most exciting things. The most exciting thing about this stuff. People have found fossils into Antarctica, so the ice melts.
What else are we going to find? What other kind of life is going to be there? Like living life or just more fossils?
Well, we know that all the fossils that have been found so far, at least all the big ones, when you're thinking of, large flora and fauna, dinosaurs, I'll just say it, dinosaurs, what kind of weird dinosaurs are we going to find? And maybe we'll find a dinosaur civilization. All the fossils we found so far, the majority are from margins of coastal islands, exposed mountain rock places, because those are the few places that don't have miles of ice over them. And because the continent was not always so cold, because it was a subtropical climate for so long, we know that there had to be an abundance of life. I was looking for the right word that didn't have a curse word in it. So during the Cretaceous period, it did enjoy a warmer, lusher climate, and that Cretaceous period started 144 million years ago. It ended 65 million years ago.
Wow.
And those fossils are pretty exciting, just the few things we've seen. And scientists have identified a handful of dinosaur species that they think are, if not uniquely Antarctic, have been identified at least as something that would have lived in Antarctica, not just like a single animal, but that indicates a larger population. However, what you said just then was by far the most exciting thing.
What?
We might not just be looking for relics of life gone by. We may find living things, life in action, yeah?
Yeah, and who knows the size of these things? It would probably be much smaller, micro level life, or even
bacteria.
Maybe a little bit larger than that, because there are other places that we can kind of point to that are somewhat like Antarctica. And there is this one place in particular that we know of might hold these things or these keys. And it's already been looked at a bit. It's this place that you may have heard of called Lake Vostok. It's this pristine freshwater lake that's buried 2.5 miles below solid ice. That's 3.7 kilometers, by the way.
For everyone outside of Namibia and the U.S. Oh, wait, and Myanmar. Those are the three countries.
It's about the size of Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes here in the U.S., and it's the largest of the more than 200 liquid lakes that are strewn across Antarctica.
Right, yes. Beneath that ice, there is more than simply stone and fossils and dead things.
Mountains, yeah. There's lakes, man. Freshwater lakes.
That are liquid. And what we've learned is that these lakes are created when, again, the geothermal heat, the energy from Earth's core, melts the bottom of the ice sheet. This is maybe counterintuitive to some folks, but the thick blanket of ice on top acts as insulation. These lakes don't get out much.
No, they don't. They just kind of, I don't know, they're happy. They like the quiet life.
And that's perhaps why they've been isolated for hundreds of thousands to millions of years. And when something's isolated that long, if you're familiar with the evolution, the creepy, in my opinion, the creepy evolution of cave-dwelling creatures.
Oh, yeah.
Then you know that hundreds of thousands, well, more millions of years, gives creatures space to adapt.
Oh, yeah. And so, as you can assume, scientists are really excited to get into these lakes, like Lake Vostok, and really do as much research as possible, go as deep as you can into the lake, and just explore it as much as possible. Can you imagine being a scientist and discovering perhaps even a new type of life at the bottom of one of these lakes?
I'd be like the academic version of Kanye West.
Yeah, you could drop all the mics.
I would be yelling at people at meetups for readings. I would interrupt people's presentations on their findings.
Even if you found microbial life, right? But what if you found something bigger in one of those lakes?
Yes. So scientists have raced to collect water samples from Lake Vostok, and this was relatively controversial because what we are essentially doing when we do something like that is that we are breaking the seal on something ancient, right?
Yeah.
And going through here, what the scientists found was they found life. They found living things in there. And to me, that's kind of, well, it's beautiful. I choose to interpret it as beautiful rather than ominous. But you're right, Matt. They found bacteria, but they found more than that, too.
Yeah, they found over 100 multicellular species, that's huge. They even found some species that are generally associated with mollusks and fish. And there was even one researcher who I think said, well, with all these findings, we might even have fish in there somewhere. And then he very quickly was like, okay, well, maybe not fish, all right?
Right, because it's so difficult to present scientific findings to the
general public.
Well, I would say it's not it's not difficult to present this stuff to the general public because there's this great error that people often make about quote unquote the general public, the quotidian, the common man.
Sure.
And that is to say that a single individual is smart, but a group is stupid. Now, as convenient as that might be, as fun as it might be to read on like a very negative Hallmark card,
I've never seen that before.
the fact of the matter is that people are intelligent, and cognitively, people are similar to that old story about goldfish. Our intelligence grows to the size of its container. So who makes the container? Who frames the debate? It's not that scientists will report something and everybody in the world is all of a sudden just dumb about it. No, it's that they report something, but then it is condensed and twisted into something that can be told in 2 minutes and 30 seconds before shifting to a picture of like a cat that accidentally sneezed while it farted, which I would watch.
I'm with you to an extent.
So I don't think I think it's just a huge error to say that he had to withdraw that might have fish thing because people wouldn't understand it. But what he was probably more concerned with was someone who wants a really good headline grabbing it and running with it and saying like,
oh yeah, and I'm sure they did.
Fish.
I don't remember seeing the headline, but I'm sure it existed.
And so we do know though that this is exciting, right? There's a great lead here. There's evidence that compels us because this is one of how many lakes? 200, you said?
Yeah, 200. And we've already found some evidence. We already know. There's going to be something down there, Ben, that's going to be, I don't know.
I cannot
dinosaur?
wait.
There's going to be a dinosaur.
Yeah, I cannot wait. Ancient civilization, alien life.
A pyramid?
Let me know. A pyramid? Are you kidding me? That would be great. I don't know if it'll be, if it'll happen.
No, probably not. But
probably not.
I'm going to keep hoping and, I was going to say praying, but.
Well, that's the thing though. We literally don't know. It's such an exciting thing, and often we as a species think about space, deep space, as the vast unexplored territory, but this is vast unexplored territory that, in a cosmic sense or cosmic scale is right next to us. We're already there. And I'm interested to see it. I'm very interested in the future of Antarctica, and I know you are too. As a matter of fact, this is one of the things that we talked about off air that would be one of the most important coming developments, and that is who owns it. Precisely.
Who will own Antarctica in the future?
Right, yeah. So we talked about that treaty, the Antarctic Treaty. It started out with 12 countries, and now there are 52 because they would start signing the terms of it so they could send scientists down, do some research. It has a couple of very big provisions. The first one is that Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. So no nuclear bases, guys. No submarine re-ups. None of that.
I feel like that's a tough thing to enforce, but I don't know.
It's not impossible. I'm sure it's a pain in the butt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Just to even get a ship down there is annoying.
Well, other islands in the area that are owned by various countries as research islands may not have those same stipulations. So, for instance, if you're Queen Maud Island.
Yes.
Or, excuse me, Queen Maud Land is part of Antarctica, but what about the islands off of that? Do they also qualify? And these are things that are answered in the treaties, but the answers may differ at certain points in time or in territorial reckoning. Another thing is that freedom of scientific investigation in Antarctica and cooperation toward that end should continue. So, if you're a scientist from the U.S. and Noel's a scientist from
Finland.
And I'm a scientist from Azerbaijan, or whatever,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. Then no matter what's really going on with our countries, we should be able to cooperate as academics. And scientific observation and results from Antarctica shall be made freely available. So no keeping secrets, no saying, we've discovered the ruins of an ancient alien civilization. No one tell Greg.
Oh, you know what? We probably shouldn't tell Greg. He's just going to get so excited.
You know how he is.
He's going to start telling everybody that he found it.
He is. I wish he never started that Tumblr. Look what I found.tumblr.com. Yeah. But so, all right. So right now there is this agreement that holds, but this agreement, this treaty, is going to come under some increasing pressure as Antarctica becomes increasingly accessible, right, and important. Mm-hmm. Once the ice melts, what kind of mineral deposits are we looking at under there, you know?
Who's going to be... Here's the crazy thing. Who's going to be worried about Antarctica when all this ice is melting? Well, you know, actually, now that I think about it a little bit more, if the land ice really starts melting at an increasing rate to a point where this land is livable, we're going to have to find new places for humans to live. Maybe this is the answer.
Wow. I don't
All these
know.
coastal cities can't live there anymore.
Yeah, but what's the span of time for that too? That's what
It's
I
a
wonder.
large span of time, but eventually Antarctica might be the answer.
It might be the new neighborhood for people.
For a few million years until the next ice age.
Maybe, yeah, and that depends on. Oh, we should also talk about the poles next. But so Antarctica has the potential to become a hotspot for international competition, similar to the North Pole, where soon, probably, if you're listening to this, probably within your lifetime, there will be parts of the year where the ice at the North Pole melts to the point where ships can navigate across it, which would be tremendous for international shipping and also very dangerous for the countries involved as they negotiate peace. You know, we were talking about this off air too. Once upon a time, Alaska was called McKinley's Folly.
Yep.
Because he spent so much money on it.
Why would you buy all this?
Right,
Ugh.
right. And, you know, listeners who are not based in the U.S., I was thinking from this perspective when I looked at a map of the 50 U.S. states recently, and I thought, man, yeah, Alaska looks weird. Alaska looks like, how did you call that? What happened? The idea of these poles of the world becoming new regional hotspots or new global hotspots is not as strange as it might sound. And I know that it can be tremendously controversial for people to talk about that stuff, but it's the fact is it's happening. People are just talking about why it's happening and what the timeline is. But to paraphrase the old opera quote, the lady has sang.
She already sang?
She already sang.
Oh,
this
no.
is happening. There's not much people could do to bring back the ice, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, at least in the North Pole, it will be navigable by water because there won't be that ice there all the year. But again, also, I should probably hedge my bets there because I said in your lifetime, but we're not sure.
Yeah, we're not sure how old you are either, listener.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I'd like anybody who studies the climate professionally to let me know your estimates. I'd love to read them on air. Oh, and speaking of corrections, we do have another one. I messed this up. I slipped when we were talking in our earlier episodes on World War III.
Okay.
It was Nikita Khrushchev.
Yes.
Who gifted Crimea to Ukraine in 1954, not Stalin.
Right after Stalin.
Yeah, it was
when it
Khrushchev.
happened. Yeah.
So the last thing we should talk about here is the pole shifting,
Oh yes.
which came up recently on our social media, right? Here's the long story short. All the evidence indicates that every so often the magnetic poles of Earth shift. So what this means is essentially the North Pole becomes the South Pole becomes the North Pole. Most times it happens gradually. The poles start to slowly shift away from their part, and then the north that your compass points to is not the geographical north,
Yes.
right? And this is something people know if you use a compass, but other times it's just flipped, like in Fresh,
Like a rubber banding.
like the life of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in his theme song.
Just gets flipped, turned upside down.
And this, I just bring this up because we're talking about the polls. But
Sure.
every so often you hear people worrying about this. This is another thing where we know that historically we're overdue for it.
Yes.
But when does that date actually come due? No one knows really how to calculate it.
Well, and the effects of a pole reversal like that, it's because we're talking about the magnetosphere and the inner mechanics of the magnetic nature of Earth. I don't have all that information, Ben, about what it's going to do exactly when it happens, but it seems like the effects aren't going to be massive.
No. I think the effects will be probably the effects will probably be massive for certain migratory species that depend on that reckoning to navigate the world. So
To understand which way is north.
yeah, and speaking of north, as we sew this up, guys, I know we didn't get to everything. We're a little over our time. I just saw my buddy Kristen from Stuff Mom Never Told You walk by.
First thing we have to do, Ben, we have to do this really fast. I have to talk to Noel.
Yes.
Okay, Noel.
Yes, Matt.
I just had to talk to you. That's
Oh,
all.
okay.
I just need to hear your voice.
feeling
I was
better,
feeling
man?
scared. No, I'm not feeling good.
You don't look so good.
You're kind of unhinged,
You look
man.
a little
I like
I'm
it.
haggard.
sorry.
No,
I'm
it's
really
okay.
sorry.
It's good. I just never seen you like this, man. I'm worried.
It's very strange because I'm freezing right now, but I know my internal temperature is very hot. And it's a horrible feeling.
He's got a hot water bottle nestled underneath his chin. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very sad scene.
Yeah. The blood on your face. Yeah.
It's so funny. I was watching Mr. Robot last night, and this isn't really a spoiler alert, but so he is kicking a habit. One of the characters is kicking a habit, and he's having the night sweats and going through all that stuff. And I was watching it, identifying so hard with his character at that moment.
Right.
Holy crap.
Yeah. You liking the show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I watched the first episode. I really enjoyed it. I need to dive back
I
in.
can't speak highly enough about it. The cinematography of this past episode.
I can't place that guy. I feel like I've seen him in something that I liked, but I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what it was.
I'm not positive either. Now I just see him as that character. All right, Ben. Sorry.
No.
Well, did this Antarctic discussion at least cool you down a little?
Oh no.
Are you
honestly.
gonna put in? Did you just put in like a drum roll?
Yeah.
I did it with my mind.
Okay, we'll hear it in post.
Much like Antarctica, my ice is melting rapidly.
Well, it's time to trundle you off to a sick bed.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, Noel, I have to ask.
Sure.
I have to ask both you guys. Would you, given the chance, take a trip to Antarctica?
Don't they do like cruises or something?
Yeah, I got very close to sneaking aboard. I mean, not as a stowaway. I got one of my friend's family. She was going with them because her parents had, I don't know, retired or was their anniversary or something, and they said, "Oh, we're going to go to Antarctica." And
Wow.
That sounds like a punishment, though.
it's
doesn't it?
more affordable if more people go with us. And so, I'm a huge cheapskate. So I said, how affordable is, what do you mean?
Yeah,
You and I
yeah.
might have different ideas, but I was all set to go. And then, apparently, and I can only tell this story on the air because I'm not going to use the names, but apparently turned out it was more the dad's thing.
Oh.
And the wife eventually put her foot down and said, this is my anniversary too. Why the hell are we going to Antarctica? What are you trying to say about our marriage? Which was a nice blow. But that was my one chance to go. And there was another expedition where these guys were going to send people out to find an entrance to the Hollow Earth. And
What?
And you could sign up online to submit your qualifications. And this was, we were working together still.
Oh, I
this
remember
was years
this.
ago. I never heard back from them. So guys, if you're checking out the show, let me know how it went.
We'll go on the next one if you let us.
I don't know. Maybe their Wi-Fi is not good, being in the Hollow Earth and all. So Noel, what'd you think about the episode before we close out? Got anything?
No, I don't know anything in particular. I think you guys were thorough as usual. I think there's some interesting things to think about.
I don't think we were, man.
You
I think
don't?
there's so much more we could do. I want to go to Antarctica, sign up on a research station, put my 2 years in or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I want to find the thing.
you want to find the thing.
Yeah,
You know,
I think it's down there.
I think there's a possibility too that we talked about it. Like, could you accidentally dig too deep and resurrect some contagion or pathogen?
Yeah.
Is
it
that what the
possible?
thing was, by the way? What is the thing?
The
I
thing
mean,
was an alien life form
okay.
that landed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's hard to say exactly what it is.
Right.
Because you don't really see its natural shape
Hence the ambiguous title.
for a
Yeah.
while. Yeah.
But yeah, you didn't even talk about that, a possible contagion or a viral life form that lives there.
We should do that in a future episode about a disease wiping out the earth, which is historically one of the most dangerous disasters, right? Even more so than an earthquake.
Quick trivia question.
Yes, sir.
We can cut this if you want. It was a trivia question the other week when I was playing. Do you know the names of the two types of plague that made up the Black Plague?
Bubonic?
Yes.
There's bubonic plague.
And then there's the other one.
Greg's plague.
I've already forgotten what it was.
You've already forgotten what it was.
Oh,
I think it was like pneumonic or something like
pneumonic plague?
Yeah, that's what it was. Exactly. It was the bubonic and
plague.
the pneumonic.
Pneumonic plague.
That sounds like a fun plague that helps you remember the bubonic plague.
It's yes.
On that
Pneumonic
note,
with
well
That's
played,
fine.
sir. Well plagued. On that note, we better get out of
Wow.
here before Kristen comes back for revenge. So we hope that you did enjoy this episode. Again, there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to, but we would like to hear from you with your thoughts on the future of Antarctica, any of the things we've discussed before, and any ideas you have for an upcoming episode. Additionally, if you want to take a page from some of the folks who've been tweeting us and writing to us, such as Cheryl and Sean, and recommending some places that we should check out or people we should talk to while we are in the District of Columbia before we get disappeared or arrested, then go ahead and let us know directly. Our email is
conspiracy@howstuffworks.com.
For more on this topic and other unexplained phenomena, visit youtube.com/conspiracystuff. You can also get in touch on Twitter at the handle @conspiracystuff. Ghosts and government cover-ups, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
I am Ben, and we are here with our super producer, Noel, a.k.a. Ghostwalker Brown, a.k.a. Warp Level 9, a.k.a. What else?
Why not Warp Level 10 as well? I mean,
Warp
he's both.
Level 10, that's
yeah,
dangerous.
That's like Super Saiyan Noel Brown.
Yes, it's true. And before we get started today, we want to thank those of you who wrote in with some fantastic feedback regarding our earlier episode on Jade Helm.
Oh, yes. Thank you for writing in. We got several interesting, different perspectives that were apart from our own perspectives on this. And man, it's great to read your opinions and even your little insights. Especially, we had someone who is a former soldier who wrote in.
Yeah, we had several on YouTube as well. Some Facebook messages, some tweets. We had some people who live in the areas.
Yes.
Right? And we had some updates. And we had... You know, it's interesting because we had several people who were saying, I can assure you with absolute certainty that nothing at all is going down. It's just sensationalism, which we asked about. And then we had several people write in and say, I can assure you with absolute certainty that something is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the space in which we live. There's a lot of certainty out there. But but there's not a lot of evidence a lot of times behind those either side of those statements, right?
Yeah. Often certainty is like an opinion or a well, this is a family show, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So we just wanted to thank everybody for checking that out. If you have not seen or listened to our recent episodes on military exercises, and the one started in July here in the U.S. called Jade Helm 15, then please do avail yourself of it. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Today we are talking about something completely different because, you know, as we said, spoiler alert, Matt and Noel and I have a few irons in the fire. We've got some schemes cooking. And as a result, we have been checking out some of our classic episodes and moving them to a new channel. And this week we did something that I really enjoyed at the time. And I still am fascinated by it.
Yes, Alloptic Energy, the Hieronymus machine.
Yeah.
Man, it's a cool idea, and anytime we talk about free energy or somehow harnessing energy that just exists
Right.
in this Star Wars midichlorian world that we live in, apparently.
Yeah. Like radionics, orgone. I won't add thetans because technically, again, spoiler alert, they are ghosts.
Yeah, spirits, yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right,
Alien ghosts.
Yes, and well, you know, perhaps one day we'll learn how to harness them without, because I
Just
can't
like
really
midichlorians. Right.
be able to harness the thetans inside each other. That's interesting.
Well, now that we have once again flirted with litigation by the Church of Scientology,
Got to do it at least one time per episode.
At least one time. It's in our contracts. Let's go ahead and just like a quick recap of what this alloptic energy is. You said it's sort of an ambient.
Alright, we have found ourselves another temple. This is the first temple we've run across that has even a chance of having stuff in it. And so we are going to sneak right in there and keep our fingers crossed. The entranceway is secure. Oh, heck yeah, we're outside the spawn radius. Alright. secure. Now we gotta get digging down. Okay, gotta get this. Will be our first treasure. Okay, and gonna start digging down over here. Okay. Gold. Why not? I'll take this. It's not gonna be any diamonds in here. Nope. Oh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, well. Now, I'm going to make a pair of shears. There we go. Well, I got my diamonds. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in this boat. Whoa, 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 whoa. Ah, nothing. And I'm going to try to get up the coast to somewhere really safe to dig in. Oh, this will be good. All right, so awesome.
And it can be focused through these devices, these Hieronymus machines devices named after the guy who invented them, quote unquote, T. Galen Hieronymus.
Exactly.
Fascinating character and interesting story. He was idolized by a sci-fi editor at the time, back in 50s, 40s, 60s, and he did somewhere in there, Matt.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, sure.
And this guy, Campbell, took it a step further and said, not only do these machines work, but because it's harnessing this unknown power, and listeners, I'm like pointing to my forehead like a crazy person now. I assume it's, Campbell assumed it was a psionic power of some sort of psychic ability. And so Campbell argued that you didn't have to build the device. You could just draw the schematic of the diagram, right?
Yeah.
And it would have the same effect.
And you could place things, objects, in certain areas of this diagram on a piece of paper that you've drawn it out, and you could somehow harness through that object like a memory or a... There are all kinds of things you could do with this device, with a piece of paper and the diagram.
And, with your mind.
Yes, it's
apparently
all your
in
mind.
this being your own thing, or being the primary mover, the engine here. Hieronymus himself objected to this, and although he thought Campbell's heart was in the right place, his intentions were good, yada, 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 he believed that this guy had accidentally set back this science of radionics by a century or more, because the way that he built these devices is you would take a substance of some sort, a sample, and you would put it in this little tray or receiving area, and then you would be able to affect that by modifying or I guess harvesting, collecting, and focusing this radionic energy, which is not proven.
Certainly not proven.
Yeah.
I don't think it is out of the realm of possibilities, especially, as we're starting to tackle what we're going to tackle this episode.
Right, yeah.
There might be something there. But, for now, we in no way can prove this, and nobody can.
I understand. And, it is quite possible that we have yet to encounter all the forms of energy affecting the reality in which we live. It would be tremendously arrogant
Okay, here we go. Shoot. I don't see any spiders. I'm going in. Come on. Okay. Shit, spider. Oh my gosh, there's redstone here. Okay, here goes nothing. This is gonna be scary as shit. Oh my god, I made it. I fucking made it. Okay, alright. Now, time to find somewhere to dig in, because we just did it.